Welcome back to Asa Camps. Today we have another opportunity for you to get to know what is going on with the auto industry, guys. And like I said yesterday, today we have another podcast with Mike Hayworth. How are you, Mike? How are you doing? What's going on, my friend?
Good.
How's your day?
Staying busy.
Staying busy?
Lots going on. Oh yeah, meetings and just work stuff. It's kind of crazy right now with everything going on and dealing with the things that change day to day. But I can't complain.
Well,
and even if I did, nobody'd listen.
Hey, but the good thing is that then at the end of the day, we have the privilege to get to talk to each other about our favorite subject. Cars,
absolutely.
Cars and more cars. At least once a week, guys. We're going to be here once a week and see if you guys need to give us a love. Give us the love. Let's tell us what you guys like about this. And if you don't like it, leave the comment down below and tell us, hey, Oz, you need to change this, and that. Mike, you need to do this and this and that. Or we love you guys, right? Which is what we want, right, Mike? And
that's right.
Then tell us what you guys would like us to talk about. So today, I propose the first subject of this podcast today. Then next week I will let Mike to take over and tell me, hey, Oz, I want to discuss this. But today I proposed, because since Mike is a European car guy and he's so passionate about all European, and I'm all passionate about Japanese vehicles, we're gonna pick our 5 most desirable and favorite cars from 5 different decades: 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, and 2010s. And I think that we're going to have a good discussion here. So, Mike, tell me, are you ready for this, my friend? Because I'm ready.
Let's do this.
Let's do this. I see that you're wearing.
Let's do this.
You're wearing your San Diego hat, so that demonstrates some confidence right there.
That's right. Like I said, it's been a long time since I've been able to wear this hat with some pride. Padre fan my entire life. San Diego's home. Got to represent the Padres.
Hey,
go Pods.
The Pods, they're going to have a good year this year. I think I put them from 1 to 3. I'll put them 3 because I got to defend my Houston Astros and the Dodgers. So in the West side. So I don't know. What you got? What you got? The Astros and the Dodgers. I'm sorry, I gotta say it.
I've never heard of them.
You heard this? Here comes the pitch.
That's that team from Brooklyn, isn't it? The Dodgers?
Nah, dude, like, come on. You kidding me. They have made more noise than that. All right, Mike. So what you got, Mike? What you got? How you going to start with?
Well, as we talked last week, I definitely have some affinity for Italy.
Yeah.
I think it's a great place. You got to love their cars.
Okay.
And I'm going to kick it off with an Alfa Romeo. The GTV 2000, beautiful car.
We have it right here, guys.
Just stunningly beautiful. It's an Alfa, so it had some rust issues. Mm-hmm. It had some, for Italian cars, the devil's in the details. They look great.
Okay.
But for example, on the GTV, where your turn indicator is the same spot. Just behind it is for the headlight switch. So every time you go to put your indicator on, you're also flashing the people coming down the road at you. Little things. It's like, well, we made a beautiful car. We need to put these other parts on, so let's just stick them wherever they fit.
Yeah, even whether they work or not.
Exactly.
Whether the gremlins come out.
They might not always work.
Yeah, for at least that. Okay. Well, that's a
beautiful car, though.
That's a heavy hit right there. I got hit because I have the passion for vehicles, and that's one of the most beautiful vehicles ever made, at least to me. But I have a good contender for you, Mike. And the reason I'm picking this one up is because my mom used to own one. And I hate my dad because he sold it before I was born. And we should have kept it forever. And this one is the 1972 Toyota Celica. And the reason I picked that one is not just because my mom used to own one, but because this was the precursor of the Supra. That's how the Supra was born, after the Celica Supra, and then the Supra was coming after this. So the foundations were there to build great vehicles. And Celica is, for me, at least for me. And it has this kind of look like the GTV 2000.
It does. There are some similarities. I'll give you that. And you know what? I probably shouldn't tell you this in the midst of our discussion.
Yeah.
But I had a 1976 Celica.
Oh,
I love
yes,
that car.
Yes. It's a good car, man.
What 20R motor?
Yes, the 20R.
Great little motor.
Yes, they don't break.
Motor. Love that car.
I think that Toyota was making an engine that was a sister engine till the late 90s, and I probably, if I'm not incorrect, to the mid 2000s with the 4-cylinder engine, the 2.4 engine that the Tacomas and the T100s 4 cylinders were like using was the 2.4 engine from Toyota, which it was the same technology from the 70s.
Yes.
That's why. So.
Which is kind of funny you bring that up, because Alfa did the same thing with the motor that was in the GTV. They continued that same motor until I want to say it was the mid 90s.
Wow.
That they, and almost unchanged, they had that motor in production.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So good hit. I will say I have to give it to you because Alfa. And this one I'm gonna give it to you because Alfa has a legendary nameplate. They have won multiple Grand Prix. They have won multiple times from the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. It's a legendary heritage that I have to give it to you. I cannot win this one. But let me see what you got next. Let me see what you got for the 80s.
Okay, I'm bringing it hard from here on out.
Come on, dude.
I've got to go.
Take it easy.
With what I think one of the best sports cars that probably were made for, certainly for that era.
Yeah.
The BMW M3, the E30.
Come on, dude. Like, you look at this, guys. Like, this is an unfair fight. And I was talking about this before we started recording. Like, you have the mecca of sports cars with Europe. And I know Japan is a good contender, and we have really good cars. But the M3 E30, man. What are you doing? Why you like the M3 E30? Do you need to explain? Do you really need to explain?
For me, it's one. It's a great car. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
It's not a big power machine.
No.
You know, it just really isn't. I think it had less than 200 horsepower when it came out of the factory the first go around.
That's accurate.
But they put the whole package together. I mean, that was a purpose-built vehicle. That was a car that was built from the factory to be a sports car. It was made for handling, and it delivered. I mean, it really, when you look at what you were getting for that time, you couldn't match it with just about anything else in that price range for sure. And it hit well above its price range. I think it's a beautiful car. Even to this day, I would buy. My son and I were just having a conversation the other day about buying an E30, not necessarily an M3 because they're unreachable at this point unless they're just trash. But to get an E30 to redo and have a fun little car with.
Okay. I hear you. I think that you have a good argument. E30. Well, I have to go with the most advanced Japanese car of the 80s, which happens to be the Datsun or Nissan 280CX. And at that time was probably the most futuristic vehicle coming straight from Japan. And I pick it over the Celica Supra because, we have history from the Datsun's 280ZX. And as it today still exists with the 370Z. So I have to give it to it because it's a sporty, it was reliable, it was cheap to own, cheap to purchase.
Yep.
And as it today, we still can buy one of those bad boys for at least mid thousands, 5,000s, 8,000s. If you find one in good condition, you can go in mint condition. They go up to 20,000. And I have seen it on the Auto Scout 24 here in Europe. And they command pretty penny. But I think that the technology that they utilize and they use in that kind of vehicle, I think it was so much advanced, more advanced than anything else in the category, including maybe the BMW M3. The BMW M3, you have a great argument. Very lightweight vehicle, low horsepower, but driving dynamics. But this guy right here, man.
It's hard to argue with it. I love the E30s. I think they're a beautiful car. They're fun to drive. They're, like you said, they're lightweight. Um, they're just a lot of fun. But smiles per dollar, I don't know that you can beat your Z car,
I,
especially comparing those two. Um, you get a similar type of experience with both of them. Maybe the M3 is a little bit more refined in terms of handling than the Z.
yeah.
Maybe not. We could probably argue that, but I think for dollars, you can't go wrong with the Z.
Yeah, I think the Z is the one on this one. So we got 1-on-1 right now. If you agree with me, guys, leave your comments down below and tell us who's right, who's wrong, or if you agree with Mike, or if you agree with me, or either way, it doesn't matter. Just leave your comments down below. So I'm gonna let Mike go one more time with the European for the 1990s.
For the 90s, I've got to go to one of my favorite cars. I know for purists from this brand,
Yeah.
they will agree with me 110%. I've got to go with the 911 Turbo S, the 993, the last of the air-cooled 911s. Great car.
This is an unfair fight, bruh. This is an unfair fight.
Nobody said it had to be fair.
I know, and I give you that. Like, hey, Mike, find the best 5 from Europe from the 70s to the 2010s, and I will find the best Japanese. But dude, I didn't even think about it. Now that I'm seeing it, it's like, oh crap.
But I will say this though, this was so much harder than I thought it was going to be. When we first talked about this idea, I really quick rattled off, 5 or 6 cars in my head, and I'm like, yeah, those are my 5. And the more I started thinking about it, I'm a thinker, so I'm overthinking. I'm like, well, do I go with the least expensive, the most fun, the most exotic? Where do I find? So I kind of try to find something, a car that I enjoy driving, that's a lot of fun,
yeah.
That also has some history to it, and has a little, I don't know, little credibility behind its name and behind the car in terms of drivers' cars.
What more credibility you want? Is a 911 Air Cool, one of the most reliable vehicles of all times, and exotic, if you agree with me. Because I don't know, that Air Cool engine is nothing that many companies can come across and be successful as Porsche has been. And I think that's the best example you can bring out there. I think that 930, my favorite is the 930, which is the previous generation, 1989, 1991. But this one is hard to argue, man. It's beautiful.
To me, this is the last Porsche that was purpose-built in terms of building a good sports car.
Mm-hmm.
Not that current 911s aren't great sports cars, because they absolutely are.
Yeah, they're super
but
cars.
But this was the last car that was not so concerned with hearing every little rattle in the car and isolating the driver from sounds outside. You drive this car, you're hearing wind noise, you're hearing the engine in the back. It doesn't have padding everywhere trying to block everything out. You hear the car, you feel the car, you smell the car. It's just a great vehicle.
Yeah, the biggest argument I have with the 911s, and it's something that at least the early 911s, is the drivability. Is not for everybody.
Yes.
Like you give it to your wife or my wife, and it turns into a weapon of mass destruction.
Because, oh no, absolutely. They would bite you.
Yeah, they will bite you.
They would bite you. The current 911s are much tamer in terms of drivability.
Yeah.
But for a driver's car,
yeah,
I don't know that it gets a whole lot better.
Pound per pound, this is one of the heavy hitters. I think the heavyweight champion probably. I'm gonna bring something nice, and the one that I choose for the 1990s, my Japanese car from 1990s. It was difficult for me because the 90s was the heyday of the Japanese sports cars. And the Supra has a beautiful space in my heart because actually, after my dad made that mistake in the 70s to change his Celica, my mom's Celica for a Supra, no, for a Malibu, my mom in the 90s, she made up and she bought a 1989 Toyota Supra. It was a non-turbo. It was automatic. Okay, got it. But she's a female, okay? She's a car enthusiast and she likes sports cars. So she had one in 1989. And it was cool, but to me, the best car of the 1990s is the Acura or the Honda NSX. Why?
Good call.
Do you guys want to tell me why? It's because it's the very first attempt from Japan to create a supercar or a Ferrari in a Japanese bones and foundations. A Ferrari that works. That's exactly what it is. And
Yes.
then they had Ayrton Senna to develop this vehicle, one of the best Formula One drivers of all times. And he fine-tuned it, worked with Honda, mano a mano, hand in hand, closely developing this vehicle. And as of today, this machine demands around $50,000. Mind that the Porsche 993 goes up to 70. So the Porsche 993 still has a special space in my heart too. But I don't know. I think this one will be a tie if you don't think. What do you think, Mike? Because
I'm okay with that because I do like the NSX. I think the NSX was kind of the first sports car for a true sports car for every man. It was a little more expensive, but in terms of reliability, in terms of maintenance costs, in terms of just about everything across the board, it continued with what Japan had started with the Z cars, with affordable sports cars.
Yeah.
And I think that NSX continues. And to me, you could take that NSX and put it on a showroom floor today, and I think it has worn very well for its age. I think it still looks great.
I think it looks relevant. You're right on the V6 3.5 engine from a minivan or from the Honda Accord still works at this day. Try, guys.
Absolutely.
Try this. This is a good experiment that you guys can do. Go and find a Ferrari from the 1990s that works every day. And find a Honda or Acura NSX that works every day. And then you got it. You got it right there.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There's no doubt. I don't care how you cut it. That NSX is gonna start every day for the next 10 years. I don't care how many miles are on it. It's built to work.
To last, yeah.
It wasn't exotic. It had a lot of technology built into it. But it just plain worked, like you said. How do you complain about a car that you can get in? And this Porsche, I wouldn't want to drive that every day.
No.
It was a great car, but I'd be, you worry about the miles you're putting on it, and you want to keep it pristine. And that NSX, I would have no issues with jumping in that every day and driving it to work.
It looks so sexy, man. And to me, when I was young, and I never saw this car before in the flesh, I thought that this was a big car, and it's not. It's probably the same size as the Porsche, a little bit bigger than the Miata, a lot smaller than the Supra. So when you look at it, it's tiny, but in pictures looks with a lot of presence. But we'll see. Let's move on to that 2000s, and I would like to take the lead on this one, Mike. So if you allow me to present the best vehicle of all times in the 2000s, Mike. The best. The highest power per liter. The king until the Ferrari, again, took over them. The 488 took over them. And you guys already know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about the Honda manually manufactured S2000. And this one, allow me to explain. I had this.
It's okay, Oz. It's okay.
Jesus, I don't have water. I need water right now. I'm choking. Oh my God. I had the pleasure to own one of these bad boys for not that long. And then live hit and I had to sell it. And let me tell you guys, this is, to me, one of the most respected sports cars of all times. It is not fast. It is not furious, even though it features the Fast and the Furious. It is difficult to drive and to keep it in a straight line when you're going in a curve because it's very happy in the tail. But that engine, for the time I owned that one, dude, it was like driving a motorcycle on four wheels, period. Yeah. And especially because it's a convertible, the body, slick body, coupe design, it works. It's another vehicle that works every time you turn it on. So
You're right.
I don't know.
And I will say, I remember the day that you called me and you're like, dude, guess what I just bought?
Yeah, I remember that. I'm sorry, guys. The phone started like ringing and caught me by surprise, but it's okay. It's the live recording. Okay,
we got call in. We're a call in show now,
right? we need to start doing that soon. Like, what do you guys think? What do you guys think? We start including phone calls. Let's see.
I like it. So but yeah. No, I remember when you called me and you said you bought that car, and you were so happy. Oh my gosh, you were on cloud 9.
Yes.
And then you called me and you're like, dude, I just sold it.
I was so mad, dude.
I don't know that I've heard a more depressed person in a long time.
It hurts. It hurts till this day. Let's just move on to your heavy hitter because I think that I'm gonna start like tearing up.
I didn't. The 2000s. That was a tough era. I mean, there were some great cars that came out of Europe in the 2000s.
Yeah.
I'm not a big Mercedes fan, but there were some AMGs that were big heavy hitters in terms of Autobahn burners.
I don't like Mercedes.
Yeah. Well, I don't have any on my list. They're not my favorites, and they're made 5 miles from my house right now.
I know.
But there were Enzos and there was Ferrari 430s and 360s and I mean, just the Aston Martins that were coming out. You have Lotuses coming out. I mean, just the list of great cars from Europe at that time was amazing. But yeah. I got to go back to one of my loves. I'm a BMW lover. I've got to stick with my M3 and go with the E46. The last year of that naturally aspirated inline 6, 333 horsepower. I mean, it was just a fabulous car and probably my favorite M car. I love the E30, but the E46 I think would be my M car of choice.
I think that E46 is the very first BMW M that I fall in love with because I was when I grew up in Puerto Rico, we didn't have enough opportunities to get to see an M product because we were poor. And the first time I saw an M product, I was in a golf course in Puerto Rico, and it was an E46. And I said, what the is that thing? It's so sexy. It has the fender flares. It sounds brutal. It's a car that it's the figure, the way it looks, the proportions are, to me, perfect. I know that they have a lot of issues with the CSL transmission. But still, we're not talking about reliability today. We're talking about better performance and actual, like, the looks. Like, we're not talking about numbers. We're not that kind of show that we're going to talk about numbers. We're talking about emotions, what that vehicle creates in you, like the kind of emotions that you're talking. So go ahead, Mike.
I think one of the big things I liked about that car is it was an approachable sports car. It was kind of the beginnings of a lot of those electronic nannies, I call them. Mm-hmm. The stability control and the ABS, and where it took a little bit of that edge out of some of these cars.
Yep.
I think it was the first car that was approachable from a driver standpoint for most people. That Porsche that we just talked about, that wasn't a car that you could just put anybody in and drive quickly.
No.
You had a lot of respect that had to be given. I think this E46 is a car that you could do more of that with. Now, it still wasn't perfect. It's still, on a smooth road, it's keeping up with just about anything. If you get any bumps in the road, the back end gets a little bit happy.
Yeah.
Not too bad, but you've got some of those nannies there that are there to catch it if you want those. You can still turn some of those off and still really enjoy. And that car with that engine, that straight 6, it just sounds so good. And
naturally aspirated. Naturally aspirated. Yes. Which is to me, other than now the new technology of electric vehicles, naturally aspirated to me wins every day over turbo induction. It is what it is. You guys can go for turbo right now. But if I have the choice to go for a naturally aspirated vehicle or a turbo induction vehicle, I will always going to go for the naturally aspirated because it works. turbo.
Absolutely.
The turbo force induction burns so much carbon and leaves so much debris inside of the engines. I don't know how to explain it. There's a technicism for that, a technical word for that. I'm not a mechanic nor an expert on that, but O-rings and pistons and et cetera, et cetera. I owned a Mitsubishi Evo 8 in 2004 when they first come to Puerto Rico. And I was messing with it, and the very first thing that started going wrong was the turbo. The wastegate, the vacuum, everything was wrong with that car. I started I wanted to increase the horsepower here and there, and that thing started going bananas. I sold it 2 years after that. I had some regrets and some afterthoughts. Why did I do that? Because right now they still command $25,000 as of today, but I sold it for $29,000 back then. It was fairly new, but I don't know. I cannot deal with that, and I think that between the Honda and the M3, Mike, I think we have 1.1 and 1.1, right? 1.5 to 1.5 points or punctuation. Right now, Honda has 2000 and BMW, I think that's another tie because naturally aspirated 6.
I agree, and they're not direct competitors.
No, they're not.
You would not cross shop those two.
No.
It just wasn't the case.
They were the best at what they did in their own means.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's move on to the last category, the 2010s, and Mike has the honors on this one.
All right, I'm going to kind of piggyback on that whole naturally aspirated thing. And I was kind of glad to see this. I'm going to go with the Porsche Cayman, the GTS with the 4-liter flat 6. Now, you and I had a chance to drive the first 718 Boxster with the turbo engine.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of uproar from people with that because it did away with that flat 6 and it went into a turbo in that chassis. I think you and I both agreed on that. If you go back and watch the video, we both didn't mind that motor.
No, at all. Not one bit.
I had no issues with it other than I'm like you. I prefer naturally aspirated. Absolutely. And so that's why there's several different models of the Cayman, like Porsche does with everything. They make one car and then they make 5 million combinations that you can put together to kind of get it how you want it.
How do they do that, right?
It's a little crazy. And it doesn't make sense from a fiscal standpoint. I wouldn't think when you sat down and looked at numbers, but it's such a niche product that I think it works fine. But I like the fact that in that GTS with the 4-liter flat 6, you get that naturally aspirated car that will rev and rev and rev. It's got 309 pound-feet of torque on it.
Okay. Which
you get almost that same amount. I know we're not numbers people, but just to throw this out there for the people that look at the Cayman S, which is the 4-cylinder turbo, which doesn't have as much horsepower, but it has almost exactly the same torque as the GTS in the flat 6.
Yeah.
However, it's a much different delivery. That turbo is a mid-range monster.
Yeah.
But it tops out quick. If you hit 4,000 RPM, you're done. You've come to the end of that power band for that motor. But with that flat 6, you're pushing all the way to redline, and it loves to rev. And for me as a driver, and as a Honda guy and as a Japanese guy, they love their revs.
I know.
You run a VTEC. If you're not at 6,500 RPM or higher, you're not enjoying it.
Put it a little bit higher, 7,000 and above.
It's the same thing in this with that flat 6. It just loves to rev, and for me as a driver, that's a lot more fun. And ultimately, that's what I picked these cars on is kind of the fun value.
Yeah.
Now, granted, that's a $120,000 car, so that's not a realistic car for most people. Would I love it? Absolutely. Is it a great car? Yes. If I'm stretching, I'm going up for that Ferrari 488 Pista with 700 horsepower.
That's
the most powerful V8. And I know I'm adding another car in there, but I just had to talk about it because if you love V8s, that car sounds amazing. My son and I were talking about this, and that's just how sound in cars bring that reaction. We talked a little bit last week about that. Mm-hmm. And for me, that 488, holy cow. It sounds, it's like an angelic sound, which most people think angelic sounds is like, you know, a very soft and nice and warming sound, but this is like an angelic sound if the angels got drunk and rowdy. Just, if the angels all went to the bar and had too many beers, this is what they would sound like. I mean, it's an amazing sounding car. But I go back to my pick for the current vehicles as the Cayman GTS 4.0.
All right. So I don't have a heavy hitter in horsepower, but I do have a heavy hitter in numbers. And this one is always the king, the answer to all of your questions, to your midlife crisis, to your younghood, to anything you can ever imagine in life. I must allow me to present the Mazda Miata, because if you have a question, Miata has the answer, or is the answer every single time. Over 1 million sold lifetime for that vehicle from 1989 till today. Over 1 million. Reliable as it can be throughout the whole lineup. This current generation revs up to 7,500 RPM with 185 horsepower. We're not number guys, but I'm a high rev guy. And it looks great. And the price, you can buy one of them with your regular job, 8 to 3 job. You can still own one and go and back and forth from work to work and home, do grocery shopping, well, if you're a single person, and go to the track and come back home in one piece. Enough. Nope, not more. No more, Mike. I want this one. I want this one. You can buy 5 Miatas with the price of a 4.0 GTS. 5.
No. And you know what? I hate to. I can't believe I'm going to say this. I really can't.
Look at that.
But if you go back and watch our video in the Miata, you changed my mind about that car.
It works.
That car changed my mind about that car.
Dude, it's so beautiful. I don't know.
It's now we can argue that. Personally, for me, okay. I prefer the Fiat version. I prefer the looks of the 124. The Fiat.
Yeah. And you know it's going away. After this year, it's going away. At least in the U.S.
I know.
And Italy is still going to be relevant, but in the U.S. it's going away.
Yeah, that wasn't a good seller for them. And it probably never was going to be a good seller. It doesn't have the name recognition. It doesn't have the history in the U.S. And it's competing with the Mazda or with the Miata. It just wasn't going to win. But for looks, I prefer that Italian style to the looks of the Miata. Though the Miata doesn't look bad. I prefer, but I do prefer the motor that's in the Mazda over the turbo that's in the Fiat.
And the 124. Yeah. I think that the naturally aspirated in the Miata is actually it develops more horsepower than the actual 124 Abarth. It's 185 in this edition against 164, I believe, and the torque end is a lot higher in the Miata than the 124. But the 124 has the sound, man. I don't know how they do that. Great sound.
But that 124 is done at 3,000 RPM.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got nothing after 3,000.
And the Miata keeps on going and going to 7,500.
Screaming. As much as I love the Cayman, I think the Cayman's an amazing vehicle. I think the 911 is the vehicle that Porsche has to make to keep its market share going. But I think the Cayman is the car that Porsche loves to make. I think they love that mid-engine platform. And I think if it wasn't for the 911, I think you would see numbers coming out of the Cayman that you see out of the 911. But there's no way they're going to put that car up above their 911. No. But I think I've got to give it to you with that Mazda. In terms of just daily driving, you can drive that Mazda at 9/10 everywhere you go.
Everywhere.
And you're not getting speeding tickets because you're not going 1,000,000 miles an hour because it's not a fast car.
Nope.
But it is fun.
It is.
And you're smiling the whole way.
Oh, yeah.
You could never drive that Cayman like that.
No. And let me tell you this, guys, and Mike. If I have to buy a sports car today, I have to buy a sports car that makes sense, right? You have to buy a sports car that is not going to be a gas guzzler. That is not going to be a hindrance to maintain. That is not going to be unreliable. That is not going to be high payment on the insurance. And the Miata checks every single one of the blocks every time. You ask any race car driver what car did they recommend to start in racing? A Miata. Ask anybody who wants to own a reliable sports coupe or convertible, or now with the hardtop, they say a Miata. It's just the way it is. And you can find them, snatch them for less than $20,000 with 2 years of use. That's it.
Yeah.
So,
no, that's a great choice. I think that's a great car. I would own one. I've talked about, hey, if I was getting right now, like I said, I've got my little GTI that I love running around in. It's a lot of fun, especially here in Europe.
Yeah.
But if I was looking for a 2-seat convertible, that's probably where I would head first.
Say the answer. What's the answer, Mike? What's the answer?
Miata.
Oh, okay. I gotcha. All right, Mike. So, guys, I think this is it for tonight. And I will say this. It was a great argument. If we go all the way, we were tied 2-2 because we had the 0.5 and 0.5 in the 90s, 0.5 and 0.5 in the 2000s, but then 1-0 in the 2010s. And it's not because it's my program, because I will tell you this. I'll have given it to Michael with the 4.0. But it's too expensive. None of us can buy it. Not even you guys. Maybe one or two of you can buy it, but not all of us. So, Mike, we had to go with the question of the day. And the question of the day is... The question of the day is, which one of these 10 vehicles that we talk you will buy today? That you can drive home every day, that you can take with you to the track, that you can show off everywhere you go. With me, one more time, the answer is Miata. I don't know, Mike. Mike, which one you would choose?
Oh,
that's a good one.
Right? You're killing me.
There are good cars out there. 10 vehicles that all of them legendary.
Oh my gosh, you're killing me. Can I like change a little bit of one of them?
I don't know. You choose. You can go for something else. Maybe something that we haven't mentioned. I don't know.
Oh man, that is tough.
It's tough.
I wasn't expecting this. Holy cow! You're killing me, Oz. You're killing me.
Coming, guys. Leave it down here. You guys voted for him.
So we're talking an everyday driver, or just like a fun enjoy car.
It's up to you. You choose. You choose your priorities. My priorities are all around. I gotta have a 5-tool vehicle.
Okay. Then I think I've got to go with the E46.
E46. All right. Tell me why. Tell me why.
So I've got the performance.
Yeah.
So if I want to take it and track it, it's more than capable.
Yeah.
Because I'm buying the stick. I'm not buying the SMG transmission, so I'm not going to have big troubles with my transmission. So I can track it.
Okay.
I've got room for a couple other people in the car. I've got a usable trunk.
Yeah.
I think that just from a daily use vehicle, if I'm having to pick one car that I'm going to use every day, I think I've got to go with that E46. As much as I love the Miata and think that's a great choice, and I'd probably kick myself several times a week for not choosing the Miata, I think I've got to go with that E46.
E46 is. All right, guys. Well, thank you for being here and supporting us at Camps. Guys, don't forget to subscribe at us at Camps. Don't forget to like this video, to leave your comment and become part of the community, and to share this video on social media. I will see you guys soon. Thank you, Mike, for being here, man. I will see you next week, too.
Absolutely. Let's do it again.
All right. I will see you guys next time.